This is an introduction to whole life practice. For me, one of the things that has been a significant part of my life is understanding that in addition to a path of awakening, in addition to developing a path that gives me the grounding so that I can cultivate and practice in a step-by-step way to develop the muscles of the mind, to develop the qualities of the heart, to develop a life of skill, of virtue, of generosity, of patience, and to use these qualities in order to touch what is timeless, to touch what does not shake, to give me a grounding in what is pervasive. Because one of the things that I recognize is that unless I have a grounding that is pervasive, unless I can touch into that, then everything in my world is unstable. It's going to change. Sooner or later, it's going to change. And so for me, the path of awakening supports the ability to develop a life of skillfulness, of compassion, a life where there's no regret, and to move towards being able to understand and to know and to access what does not shake, what is unshakable, what is reliable, even when everything around is changing and so incredibly unreliable. And so for me, that was the motivation for awakening. But in this path of awakening, alongside the path of awakening, is the journey of maturation as a human being. To move through stages where we are focused on our instincts for hunger and food and warmth, and then to feel what it's like to take care of other basic needs around a sense of satisfaction, and to move into exploring the way we experience our hunger for control and power, and the way that we learn about conforming and belonging and being in groups and our identity. The experience of harmony and learning how to look out for people that are different than oneself and find a way of being inclusive and including them. And the longing for wholeness itself, where there is a hunger that all of the parts of the system are actually working together. So awakening and the path of touching that which does not shake and the path of maturation are important to cultivate in whole life practice. But what I recognized after spending some time in the path of awakening was that I was aware of a variety of issues around trauma and the way that was impacting my body, and the fact that I would go numb and disassociate and I couldn't focus. And eventually I came to understand the whole learning of attachment strategies and how my anxiety in relationship could be slowly shifted so that I could learn eventually to trust and to relax. And so our attachment strategies, the early imprinting that we had from our families of origin, shape not only the way we view the relationships that we have, but it shapes the way we experience ourselves, and it shapes our experience in our world. And so there's a whole area of healing that includes our traumas and our addictions and our attachment strategies. There's a whole learning of self-care, of how to actually take care of oneself, how to figure out the kinds of foods that one needs to eat and the kind of exercise that supports a sense of health and well-being, and to work with the body and to use a lifestyle that supports well-being. And then there's engagement. The ability to show up and be present with others, the understanding of how to communicate in a way that gives one the best possible chance of being heard, of having one's needs met. And the practice of inquiry, where we can be with each other, witness for each other, and support each other in our own deeper understanding on the path. So these areas, healing, maturation, awakening, engagement, constitute whole life practice. And when we engage in whole life practice, it's an entirely different experience than when we are committed to one or two of these areas. And we can see that. We can know people who are profoundly committed in the path of awakening, but they're not very grown up. They might have deep understanding about what does not shake and speak about the non-duality that comes when one is not feeling separate. And still, that very same person can have racist or misogynistic or homophobic views. I know people like that. I'm sure you do too. But we can also see that in the fields of maturation, where there's a tremendous amount of knowledge and information and skills and tools and therapeutic methodologies, that it's very possible to be quite mature and to have a lot of understanding of one's own core predicaments, but not really have much access or understanding or even a framework about what does not shake. And the same is true in the path of health and healing. We can release our traumas, but we might not be very mature. We can release our traumas and not necessarily be on a path that does not shake. And as much as we can be engaged with our partners, with our Sangha, with our community, with our activism in the world, that by itself does not necessitate a path of maturation or awakening. And so when we bring all of these together, we have an opportunity for a whole life practice where insights and health, where maturation and engagement, where we bring the best possible of ourselves into the world for our own benefit, for the benefit of our communities. And because as we are maturing, we make the greatest possible impact in our ability to show up and be present for the unbelievably complicated global problems that we're dealing with right now. It's the greatest gift that we could bring to the world right now, is to bring the fullness of our own maturation, health, awakening into our willingness to engage.